Hello and welcome to the Identity Podcast. I am Caleb, one of your co-hosts, along with my fellow and lovely co-host, Tarek. We're so grateful to be here. As always, it's great. Of course, we are the Identity Podcast, presented to you by Find Your ID NYC. Don't forget to check us out on all streaming platforms and follow us on all social media platforms. And check out the podcast every Wednesday at 7:15 p.m. Eastern Time. Of course, subscribe to our Patreon page and our Discord page, all at the Identity Podcast. And if you ever just want to find all of our materials, check out our link tree on all of our social media bios. That link right there has all of our materials, whether it be social media, streaming platforms, whatever it may be. Check out our link tree page. Of course, we're here with another episode for the Identity Podcast. We're so grateful as we get one step closer to August, our 1-year anniversary. Very exciting stuff. Here is Creating Connections, episode 51, featuring Dawn Mullarney. We're so grateful to have you, Dawn. Welcome. Welcome.
Thanks for having me.
So welcome.
How are you today?
I'm doing well. How are both of you?
Doing well. We're here.
Good.
It's a wonderful time to do a podcast, right?
Right.
Not to be
Honestly,
too cliche.
it really is.
You podcast all the time, Caleb. That's always a good day to do a podcast, right?
Okay, you don't have to.
One day.
You don't have to yell at me.
I'm calling him out. Welcome, guests. Welcome, everyone who's paying attention to us on this fine day. We appreciate you guys. So we're welcoming Dawn. She's here with us. She has a lot of hats she wears. This is kind of how she described it. And you know how we do on the Identity Podcast. We tend to kind of start with what's the journey, and that's kind of Caleb's tagline. I appreciate this guy. He's a marketing genius. But yes, the journey. And we often just ask, so like, kind of just what brings you to us today, and what kind of brought you across your life, and like what were some like pivotal moments that got you to decide your career or certain journeys that you've chosen, specifically career right now.
Okay. Well, I would say I have realized over my career and lifetime that I used to be very shy to now loving connection, love meeting people, love figuring out what they're passionate about and what they're excited to do. And I love figuring out how to be a resource and how to help them. Whether it be for services that I have to sell, I work at a community bank, or how can I get you where you want to be? Who can I connect you with? So I'm all about connecting people, but I think it's been an interesting journey of how I started and how I've gotten here.
I can only imagine. So you said like resourcefulness basically is kind of like what you would say is one of your identifying factors. Have you always felt like that?
Yeah, I just have realized that you can help people, even if it's just a smile or being kind-hearted. Being a resource and being kind-hearted and just helping others can really go a long way. Maybe it's not always getting them something or introducing them, but it's just being a human and caring for others is what I'm really passionate about.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting. I mean, just to the word like resources, and just like with your back end and banking, or I guess we can tell them a little bit about. So how did you get to where you are now career wise? Let's start there. So how did you get to even, I think it just popped up if anyone was watching, be a trust officer, or to even start managing other resources? That was where I was going to make that little connection pun there. Because honestly, finances are a resource as well as smiles. So I want to be rich in smiles too, though.
Sure.
I see.
And your guests are probably wondering, well, what the heck's a trust officer?
Right, exactly.
I would say if you asked me a long time ago, I would be like, I have no idea. I'm not going to be a trust officer one day. But, just to give a quick brief of what my history has been, I, out of college, went into the construction industry, actually. I was one of the only females in a construction office. It was a crane aerial rental unit company, and I was hired to invoice and payroll. Well, that really progressed over 4 years, where I was working in the parts department, the service department, helped with the logistics, knew where all of our semi-drivers, crane operators, where the units were going, whatnot. And I guess I just wanted more. I wanted to keep learning, and being a woman in that industry was a little difficult too. And so I took a drastic leap and took a teller job to get my foot in the door and be closer to where we lived. And it progressed pretty fast. I did a teller job for a little bit. Then I worked as a loan assistant for a bit, then moved to the executive wing and helped with accounts payable, shareholder services, the executives. And I started getting efficient where they were going to have to put me down to part-time. So wealth management was trying a new position of trust administration and marketing. And I didn't know much about the trust world, but I leaped in and thought I'd figure it out. I'm one that asks a lot of questions, loves to learn more. And so through that, I've progressed also. So really kind of what my day-to-day is, I work closely with a lot of our referral partners. So in wealth management, you can, of course, work with investments, higher net worth people, but also there's other people out there too, where, they have an IRA, maybe a 401k account, but then maybe also too, they're planning to leave their legacy behind. So I work closely with attorneys that are drafting documents for their clients for their estate plans. So they're really coming up with a plan. So in case if something were to happen, who's going to handle everything for them? So I work closely with the referral partners, but also the clients to really make sure their wishes are left behind to their loved ones. And we handle it during their life, but also when they pass away. So I leave people's legacies behind. So is what I say.
That's so beautiful. Yeah. I mean, especially when you're coming from that perspective, it definitely emotes a lot more than, financial jargon. Sometimes it's just like, what, I knew exactly what, how litigation and just being through like the documents and everything can kind of see just people as ones and zeros. But the fact that you are so interested in like being resourceful or being reserving enough space for other people, you've already been inclined with the skill set to be able to manage that. So what I'm trying to get to is kind of going back a little bit when you said that you were able to break through in this construction company, right? So just give them a little background from where you're from, first of all, and like that journey, that type of home set. Like, how would you describe your home family and your home values and how that kind of transitioned into maybe being that Titan, that Wonder Woman in this situation to kind of move forward? Because even in the financial world, to reiterate and to belabor the point, it's a very male dominated world. So I know that that's something that you're also breaking through. So I'm interested in that journey. So how did you become Superwoman?
Well, thanks, Rick. I don't know about that, but yeah, so I'm actually in Wisconsin. I have pretty much lived here my whole life. I grew up, I say my sister was the very smart bookworm kind of person, and I was more of active and let's try things and do things, and she was the smart one. And growing up, then I realized, I guess I'm kind of smart too, and was realizing, more and more too, as you grow up, that you don't need to know everything. You're never going to know everything in life. And even to, being that younger sister, she was the talking one. So she was talkative. I was super shy. So sometimes she would even order my food for me because I was so shy. And
I have that problem because I'm super indecisive. I don't know. Is that what made you stop? Okay, yeah. I can't decide for anything. It's always a battle for sure. So it's good to have that dominant person that you can always rely on for sure.
Yeah. So she would talk for me. And then, I went off to school and realized, I have a voice too. Or, I have to make decisions on my own. And it's just kind of progressed over time where, even in college, I worked through all of college, lived on campus, was really involved. And I don't know, I'm one that is a positive person. So I always look to see what the positive of everything is. Not saying I've always made the best decision in life or have always taken the right path, but I always try and figure out what did I learn from that? And I don't know. That's where I kind of giggle, where I was like super shy, to now loving connecting with people and are passionate about helping and want to be a resource. And it all kind of stems from even just when I was little, of just how our family and our family ethic was. And I just think it grew into my work ethic too.
Yeah, I can hear it. I definitely hear that. I do often feel like where you come from, wherever it is, where you create your community, because that's a word we kind of throw around on the show a lot. Sometimes it is that home environment, sometimes it's a work environment or whatever. But it seems like having that older sister, that tough older sister, kind of gave you that nudge to be like, you know what, I can kind of decide things on my own, even without her. So it was great to kind of have a bit of a role model in that sense. But I really, truly just, I'm excited about kind of like how you kind of managed to move through those things, like move through each company and just like move forward. Like, honestly, you still feel like you said you were kind of figuring out exactly what you would define directly as your identity, right? In a sense. So yeah, I'm me and Caleb are on this soul searching thing. That's why we created this podcast. So welcome. You should watch more episodes. No, but no, I say all that to say, the reason why we created this was to foster that community for those just like you, down to being very young, just like having that older sister being super shy and like not knowing what they're doing. So that same inner child being around the same age as, whatever, like past a career point or been in a career for a certain amount of time, where you're getting that little girl feeling again, to be like, wow, this is terrifying. I'm going into a whole new environment. What is this? So I really see your skill set as inspiring, because some of the bigger things that you're doing, because I'm sure wealth management is highly rewarding in its own way, but the things to get to where people that want to do what you're doing, for sure, it has to have some sort of like inclination that already you're a humanitarian. You have to care for people intently because you're dealing with their financial responsibilities, their legacies. These things are, priceless, honestly. And it has to be handled with care, for sure. So it takes a certain type of person. But the fortitude to stay in the financial industry, I'm all ears. You can tell me about that all day. So did you make your way to consulting, or like you said from banking, then you moved on from there. So are you doing your own private thing, or are you still working with your own? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm still at the bank. So
Okay.
I am still doing that. My role more is focused on business development, marketing, and sales. So I really love building brand awareness, also to like strengthening relationships. I saw that we needed to be out in the community more, top of mind. And not that I don't love to work with clients, but sometimes that was even stressful for me too. Or I'm a mom also, and some people inherit money that need a little bit more hand holding. And so I do have still clients. I still work closely with them. It's just I'm trying to focus more on like, how can we be top of mind to those people and really help them and get them to our resources, and have, I have more of a team that I can give them to and kind of have them specialize on it. I want to specialize on building that connection and make them feel comfortable and trust them and have them trust me. And so that's what I'm been doing, and doing the podcast for the bank also, which is new.
Oh yeah, that's so true. Yeah, we didn't even touch on that, for sure. So what's that about?
We're just getting started.
I know. I hope if she's ready to tell us all the secrets. But sure, like what's the podcast about? How did that start?
Yeah, so the podcast, we've been doing it since last year, October. So during COVID, we kind of started that. We have, banking industry is kind of more male dominated, but we have a lot of women in our bank that specialize in a lot of great things. And so we kind of want to start this women's initiative to kind of showcase what women we have, but also let's learn more from the community. So we started this podcast really to build connection with other women leaders and to get them on the show to help inspire other people. Maybe it's empower them to make that risk, that leap, to showcase that no one's journey looks the same. And sometimes we fall, but we have to get back up and try new things. So that's what I love about it, because I get to meet, unique women all over and get them on the show, get their story out, make them feel comfortable that they want to open up and talk about their life and what maybe their journey's been like and the hurdles they've had.
That's beautiful. That's really beautiful. Go ahead, man. That's gorgeous.
To be honest with you, I think it's really important because as we've talked to several other, fellow podcasters, as Tarek has talked to different podcasts, as I've, talked to, and we both separately been on different podcasts and everything. And as someone who also hosts different podcasts, I think it's really important, no matter what type of podcast you have, no matter who you talk to, it's really important for them to be able to get their voice out there, right? I think no matter who you are, where you are, it's the fact that we have this opportunity, especially right now in 2021, we have this incredible opportunity to put your voice out there. And, I think the Identity Podcast is a great way to allow other podcasters, but also allow other individuals across the globe to be able to talk about who they are, their identity, their path, the way that they've discovered. And to kind of go back just quickly to something you said, Dawn, earlier is, you kind of mentioned this before the show and also throughout the show thus far, is the fact that, you're still trying to define who you are and discover who you are. That right there is literally the answer of the Identity Podcast. And that's something that I think I mentioned and Tarek mentions like every episode, but we try to reiterate that because it's so important. It's important for ourselves to recognize, but it's also important for our listeners to constantly hear that it is okay if you have not discovered your identity, because we're constantly discovering your identity. And I think for you, as you said, Dawn, you went from someone being kind of shy and to now being a podcaster, which we'll talk about and kind of divulge more into in just a second. But I think it's really important to recognize that you have grown so much just becoming a podcaster, and you've discovered a whole new pathway. And I think Tarek and myself can both say just having the Identity Podcast alone has given us a new lens to life, has given us a different path that we never, ever would have imagined we'd be going down. And here we are driving 70 on the highway on that path.
Right. Anniversary's coming up, man, for sure. He's exactly right. He's exactly right.
Exactly. And so I kind of, as a question just to ask you, is kind of how has it been? It's been more recent that you started this podcast. So how has it kind of been going from someone who was shy or you felt was typically shy to becoming a podcaster? Because I know I myself am not shy. And so, I've had my speech troubles in the past, but I was not shy. And so I am very curious to kind of see how it's been for you and how it's been to kind of put your voice out there. But also, and this is kind of two-part question, also into working in a bank, as you said, in a very male-dominated industry, and I am certain probably a very male-dominated bank overall. How has it been trying to put your voice out there, trying to put who you are, and your fellow women who you can kind of allow them to put their voice out there as well?
Yeah. Well, overall, it's been a really big learning experience. I was really going to be the background of the show. We first started this and, it was new for us and we didn't really know how it was all going to turn out. And is this going to be successful? And I was just going to help get speakers on. And my colleague who had her JD was going to be the host of it. And I was practicing with her. And then they decided, oh, she should be on the show also. And so it just kind of progressed pretty fast. And then she got inspired from them, is what I say, and joined her husband. And so she joined her husband's business. And I would say right there, it was just like another learning thing for me of like, okay, so what are we going to do now? We kind of reanalyzed things. I really suggested some different things I learned from the show and just what my strengths really are, actually. Like I realized wow, I can really make people feel comfortable. I can really connect well with people. I can ask these people to be on the show and they're like, yes. And so even right now, I'm booked out till the end of October already. I mean, we're in July right now. It's something I realized that maybe I didn't always have. So I think like it's helped me learn and have more confidence about myself, but also too, like really hone on what my strengths are, which is really connection. And I think the part I love about the podcast is I can bring different people on that I think are going to be good for the show. And I think the part I've just realized is just more and more that I just get inspired all the time, from nonprofits to executive women to people that start their own business to all these different things. And also have that wake up call of like, life is so short, and what are we doing to bring our best selves to this world? And I think that's for even too, for me, like, I hope I'm bringing to the bank, showing up as a good leader to show that other women, I don't need to know everything, or I'm never going to be able to know everything, but sometimes you have to hone on what you're really good at and bring your best self to a company and bring that creative mindset, because I've always considered myself not a typical banker. I think differently. I think creatively. I try new things. And it also too makes me realize like how of a high achiever, which is a good strength of mine, but that's also a saboteur of me. So sometimes I'm always running to what's next, and I don't always take in the moment. And I think podcasting has actually had me sit back, take in the moment to understand and learn from the guests. And then, when the episode goes live, I sit and listen to it again, and it just, I don't know, it's helped me slow down and really listen and hear the messages from others. So did I answer both of your questions now that I'm thinking?
I think so.
I think so
Sorry,
too.
it was very, very detailed, and my apologies on that. But something you mentioned real quick is and I really like that, kind of inspiration, being inspired. I think that's so important on a daily basis, no matter what you do, whether you're podcasting or you work at a bank or you are in the entertainment field, whatever it may be. Being inspired is very important. And so I kind of have a quick follow-up question. And that is kind of, when was the moment where, while you are a part of this podcast and you've been able to officially be brought on as a co-host and everything, when was that moment, that defining moment that said, this is a great opportunity for me, this inspires me, anything that you just kind of mentioned? When was that moment?
It was actually the moment when my colleague left, and we were trying to figure out the details and everything. And I was kind of like, you know what, I'm going to show up and be a leader. And I think it even goes back to, maybe sometimes when we're growing up, the interpretation of what things are maybe not really what it is. So I always thought, as being a leader, you had to be a manager and you had to be in charge of people. And it's like, no, you just need to show up as your best self and bring like your strengths and bring yourself to the table. And so I tried to lead with it and show that, the problem is not getting guests on the show. Like, I can breeze through that. It'll be fine. I'm still learning, of course, and, trying to bring my best self to the show and not getting nervous or flustered. But I think that was kind of that pivotal moment. And I think too, just COVID, pandemic, whatnot, all that stuff, I think it's just been, and my own health hiccup, it's just been a wake-up call that just life is so short, and we really need to show up as our best selves and not let others hold us back, or maybe what others may think of how it's going to be. I don't know. I know I'm probably not for everybody when they listen to the podcast, but I just hope that others are listening and getting inspired and enjoy it as much as what I've been enjoying it as. So, yeah.
I think so. I think people are going to enjoy it because you already created quite a community for it. Your mission alone seems pretty large. So as we approach this, idea of like just being like ultimately empowering to women, or along the feminist journey, how has motherhood been as you've been transitioning through career as well? I know that's the proverbial question, right? Everybody asks, like, how does it work down there? Like,
right? And I think that's too what's been interesting for me is just like I am all about female and helping them, but that's not too. It's just like, I want to empower everybody. And right now the focus has been on women. And I think too, back, and great question about asking about motherhood, because motherhood for me was kind of a shock of like, oh gosh, now what are we going to do? Or just how to juggle all of it. And I mean, even if I sit back and I think back how my path has been, I being a high achiever or just having high work ethic, I said yes to a lot of things, or I worked a lot and I missed out a lot on my son. And even I would take on things when people would leave, and I would work long hours. I would work early in the morning. I'd work all day, and I'd go to events all night because I knew we needed to be top of mind. And deep down, I should have been home more. And I think that too, where I hope others can sit back, whether a mom or not, but just too, to sit back and enjoy life a little bit more. I think that's where COVID, hopefully a lot of people are just realizing to just slow down and take in the moment, spend time with your family more. And it's hard when you're growing in your career. You want to show up as your best self. You want to keep taking things on, to keep showing that you're a leader, or that you can keep growing. And I mean, I'm still learning every day. And I think we're all on this path, but that's where I say earlier, like, I'm a high achiever. That's a strength of mine, but it's also a saboteur. And I am a pleaser also. So I really want to do what's best for everybody. So I forget about what's best for Dawn sometimes, or best for my son or my husband. So it's a work in progress. But I think I've just really realized that you don't have to say yes to everything to keep growing. And, you know, some things do fall in your lap for a reason. And of course, you sometimes need to say yes, but deep down, you can't always do what everybody else wants you to do. So, yeah.
Words to facts. That's so true. Wow, man. You know, it's so funny along people's journey, they do feel like they have to just keep gigging or freelancing or anything. And I come from a world of entertainment industry where there are a lot of musicians I know that are so talented, but they're stuck because they never grew past a certain space. They just kept trying to put more effort into it and tiring themselves out. And I honestly feel, like you said, more calculated effort, more relaxation. And even like you mentioned earlier about podcasting, you know, a lot of things have changed since 2020 in terms of patience and what businesses, what they care about. And a lot of that type of humanitarianism has changed. So even in that moment, like you said, the silence of just like meditating on like exactly what I want to get done. Is this something that I really care? Is this going to benefit my family? Is this, you know, that matters. And we can take a step back. I'm from New York. I mean, we're always on go. So when you're talking about like saying yes to everything, there had been days where I had done anywhere from 14 to 18-hour shifts. And I was just like, I was beat, you know. It was the most experience, like, you know, you're on a concert stage with every celebrity. So it was fun. But I started realizing, yeah, like I'm trading these hours over time for what? What is the trade-off? Because what I'm gaining probably won't even be worth that. Mm-hmm. So even as a podcast, you know, as you're starting something out, the inception of something always seems so trivial and like it doesn't mean much. But we create the value over time and how much energy we bring to it. And ultimately, if it's your own, you won't have to run out to other people. And that's why we preach entrepreneurship so much. So that's why I'm happy to see you doing your own podcast. That's why I asked that. I also asked that comment about consulting, because I'm sure some of these people, you're just probably the therapist. You're handling their money, but you're just like, could you like, you know, lay off the booze today, you know, whatever. But I understand that a lot of your what you're doing comes from your heart.
Yeah.
And that skill set can be spread anywhere for sure. You know, Caleb is a mastermind of being able to use his heart efficiently so many different places. I'm still learning that. As he says, I'm a Virgo. No, I'm a Libra, so I'm all over the place. And I also am a people pleaser by nature. I'm an empath, all these things that we want to label ourselves. But naturally, I do feel my perfectionism has been my demise by allowing it to fall into ideals and something that may not be tangible, like family members or just waking up that morning or being grateful for smaller things like that. So I think it's interesting when you do become something powerful in a company. So I do want to say something to that and ask you a question about that if you're interested. Sure. As you became more valued at the company, how was it kind of pulling back to be like, I kind of need this more time? This is something that we haven't really spoke about. A lot of our guests have left corporate and they're just like, yeah, I left. You know, they never talk about that transition period. So since you are still in that world, how have you been able to kind of wean off from the rat race in a sense?
Yeah, I would say I'm still learning. It's something that is not always easy. And I think unfortunately, the time when I stepped back was after being in the hospital for a bit. And long story short, I was in the hospital for a reason, but in addition, when I was there, they thought I had a stroke because I was so stressed. And so I have a migraine syndrome. So if I get very stressed, I guess, my whole left side of my body will go numb. And that was just that wake up call of like, what are you doing to yourself? Because even when I was in the hospital, I was thinking about work and, oh my gosh, I'm missing work. What am I going to do? And, instead of like, what about my family or what's my son doing? It's silly things.
What about me?
Right. Yeah.
She's like in the hospital still like, what about everyone else?
Yes. So
oh my gosh.
I'm still taking baby steps and I'm learning. And I think even to kind of go off of that is one thing that I realized is I don't sit back and celebrate exciting moments. Like I'm just always thinking, what's next? And I'm like, oh, great. This is a great achievement. And then I think, what's next? And what I've been trying to do is like sit back and actually like take it in, Dawn, and realize like how far you've come.
Right.
And I don't know if it's just something too that I've just always like got to excel, got to make an impact. But I mean, even during COVID, so I got 40 under 40 and I was like, oh, cool.
Wow.
What's next? And some people are like, well, that's really a big achievement. I'm like,
yeah, it is.
Okay. And I just think like, what's next? And
right.
I don't know. That's just me. And I think too, I've realized through all this is I've always thought that you can't celebrate moments like that because then you're going to become big-headed about yourself. And I've realized that doesn't mean that exactly. Like you can be humble and like be proud of yourself. And that doesn't mean that you're going to be big-headed and just think of yourself all the time. Like you can still sit back and realize like, wow, I have done things. I mean, even talking about my journey sometimes, like I'm like, oh God.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna comment on. I didn't want to push you too much because it was the beginning of the podcast, but now that we've spoken a bit, like you were just like, boop, job, baby, boom, boop. I'm like, okay, but I say that to say that those are those moments when we do look back because those are those moments of gratefulness. I do see myself a lot like you because I do the same thing. And Caleb has to point out sometimes like, bro, you do thousands of it, like a day. Like you helped me out yesterday. You don't even remember it, like stuff like that. And I get it. Sometimes when you're on your own journey, it's hard to look back, what's going on. But I hope that this is kind of just bringing up a lot of that for you just to show you like you do deserve these awards. You do deserve these accolades. You do deserve value. A lot of what we try to provide with all of our listeners out there that's still paying attention and listening, that you are valuable. And every time you listen to us, you create value for us. So that's kind of this like endless cycle of connections, which is kind of what the name of the episode was about. Fostering those connections within yourself and others. And that was the next step I was going to ask, but you already told me, you're like, I'm working on it. But how are you trying practices? Because of finding more value of yourself, gratefulness is definitely the biggest one. That's what that was my hint, but for sure, that's how I do it. If I ever feel in those moments that I'm doing too much or that I haven't done enough, I often just look back and I'm grateful and kind of like really sit back. The same thing that you said, whether it's 2020 putting us on our butt or just, like you said, some sort of illness or something, like, it's, some people say it's something spiritual trying to talk to you, like a wake up call of sorts. And it's time for you to kind of, take time and see that. And I had to too. I like those 16-hour shifts. I probably never will push myself like that again. I'm at a point where it makes more sense to just use my time more wisely. If I'm going to do 16 hours, I'd rather do a 16-hour podcast or something. But
no, thank you. I like podcasting, but
marathon for sure. But yeah, I still have to say some other practices that we've heard, because we have a list. Caleb actually knows the list because he's been doing this for a while. What are some other like super healthy practices? I feel like we've used writing some of these things down.
Yeah.
Like every time you make an accolade. First of all, 40 under 40, like, you can clap it up on the actual show. We don't have an applause meter, so we'll just add that later.
Actually, I actually got one. I have. It's not plugged in right now, but next episode I do have one.
We will get
it set up.
Charge them up.
Yes.
Get the crowd going.
It's a mix.
But they're coming. They're coming. I promise. But but I think that's really great. I don't even know why you didn't mention that earlier, but other accolades along those lines are definitely worth it. But your humbleness, and I do want to speak to this fact because I do think a lot of successful people have this issue, and it's not something that's spoken about a lot. And I appreciate you being vulnerable about, what had happened to you, as well as kind of where it comes from. It's definitely something mental with us. Sometimes we get pigeonholed into something. So, our physical psychosomatic situations happen afterwards. That's when we're like, oh my God, what was that? But it probably was over time, pushing yourself. And I've definitely been there, like mentally, where like I feel like I have to do this, and this obligation thing is beyond me. When we had the Buddhist on, he spoke about just completely losing all attachment to everything, and the Taoist teaching has its own aspects of that, especially if you're talking about finances and the fact that we're lingering on with financial legacy. I guess that's kind of against Taoism in a sense, but I still have to say that what the true legacy of what you're going to be leaving behind is your essence and what you created. So the better you are in those moments, it does come back to this idea of being a leader. And you do mention that word a lot. So who do you feel like has been one of your biggest leaders as a childhood, and who do you see as like a strong leader now?
Yeah. My childhood, I would say my uncle, he was very the quiet type, I would say, but him and I always had a connection, and he's always been my cheerleader, I would say, in the background. Even like over through this COVID and my own health and stuff, he like sent me this thing where he's just like, just realize all you're doing, like hard work, like it's going to pay off. And I'm so proud of you. And I was just like, oh, made my day, and my year and whatnot. And
Beautiful.
I would also say my boss that I have has been a great boss and a great mentor. He early on exposed me to different things when I'd ask questions, or he'd be like, come along, come with me, and I think that just really helped open my eyes too. I just think of like, I was still young. I mean, out of college, 6-7 years out of college, and it's still like, you don't know everything. And it's just experiences that I hadn't had it before. And, I just kept going. And that's where too, I just was learning things and trying out stuff. And I mean, I even go back and think too, sometimes I would take our referral partners out, our top ones, and they'd be like, but aren't you kind of more in the back office on stuff? And I'm like, yeah, but I'm going to grow and be more. I want to learn more. I want to be a good partner here and understand more. And, I don't know. I've just always kind of keep learning. And I would say I've had a few additional ones through COVID time. Luckily, I had a sales class that, to just even go back to like gratitude and all that stuff, is their thing is not only about sales training, but it's also about training to be a better person. And so that's why I've loved it. And so focused on like, it takes 66 days to create a new habit. And so I would do different things that Dawn's always wanted to do, and so I would hold myself accountable because it was really for class. And so I think sometimes I've realized I've avoided stuff for myself because it's just for me,
Right.
And so I would do that for the class, and I just realized, okay, I can do these things. And also I was in a leadership class, and that is what's really opened my eyes and my awareness to what myself and how I operate, and just the things I've overlooked for so long and just kept plugging away and just thought things were maybe normal or like, what's next? And always thinking of the future and really sitting back. Like, she had us do an exercise where we had to write about our life story in chunks of like 7 years and write the pivotal moments of like maybe decisions we made or certain things that were really exciting in our life during that time. And it was just so interesting to look at each growth in those pockets of time. And I don't know, I've just been on this journey to really realize who I am and what I really want to bring to the world, or what I have been bringing to the world that I've just been clueless to, or have never sat back and really realized, like, oh, maybe I am that friend that loves to bring us all together and create a community and to be that person that gets us all together. That's easy for me. For some of my other friends, like, that is hard to do. And I'm like, I could do that in my sleep. Like, just come. Like, I just want everybody to be together. And I don't know. It's just stuff too that you think because it's easy to you, it's like not as important. And the things that are really hard to you, that's okay. It doesn't mean you have to learn it and you have to be perfect at it. That's why there's other people in the world that can help you or do it for you, or you can hire. And I think that's just one thing I've learned, that you don't have to know everything or be the best at everything, that to really hone on what you're really good at.
That is the most wisest thing I've been dealing with all week. Like, I mean, probably all month. I've literally just had that conversation with someone very recently. You're so true. I think it's so unhealthy that we feel like we have to struggle or fight to become the greatest part of ourselves. It kind of like, I guess, ruins the hero's journey that we watch on TV all the time or whatever. Most of the time, you're pretty talented at something that you just need to hone in on. I'm often very big on that too. I actually had a situation where I inspired like a group of my friends from high school. We've been from, I won't date myself, but for everyone that was there, all came together. Some lawyers, some went off and did other things and whatever. And one became a film producer, and he was in a funk, and I had been inspiring him and doing all sorts of stuff. And he eventually wrote a script that involved all of us as a community. And he just told me at the end of it, like, bro, honestly, you inspired this. And I was just like, what? And I thought about it, and I had been really kind of just like dealing with it on a very deep basis. Like, I have fought so hard for against the things that I found easy, because the other people found it easy too. Because if it's easy, then why would I get paid so much to do it? That's how I always used to think. And I think a lot of these psychological things can kind of just be broken down once we have deeper conversations and connections with others, especially good mentors. Because that was what I wanted to say as well. Another note that we always push to all the people that are listening, having great leadership and great mentorship, and also like being able to pay for a class. Maybe you may not have accessibility to that, but finding some trajectory is super helpful along your growth and your journey, because you can run amok and run in circles with very little information about yourself or the environment. Mm-hmm. But that note is so interesting, man. I often kind of envied people that knew what they wanted when they were younger, in that sense, because they were able to value something about themselves. But what I ended up doing was becoming like you're like, which hat do you want? I just started becoming good at so many different little things. So mastery is definitely the key now. But what do you think about that, Caleb? I think that's definitely a highlight. That's definitely going in the quote book. That was a great one. Caleb? I'll probably let you know a little bit. Well, yeah, we can continue. So the major. Oh, you here? You back?
No.
Okay, good.
Yeah, I've been here. I
I
thought
couldn't
you were
hear
still
you. I couldn't
talking.
hear you.
Yeah, I'm here. Oh no, you're good. I thought you were still talking. No, to be honest, to kind of go on what you were saying, Tarek, and also just to kind of go on what you've said this entire time, Dawn. I will say I've been inspired by what you have had to say, and truly and honestly, it is it's incredible to have your mindset and to have what you have been able to gain over the years, and to be able to sit here and say what you said. I think is incredible, and I think it really shows that you've worked hard, right? And you've really you've tried, and I think that is one of the biggest things in life, is admitting that to yourself. I think you can admit it to the public and say, yeah, I've tried hard, and I've really tried to grow and everything, but it's admitting it to yourself that is so important. I think it's so important. I constantly will, get on myself at times of saying like, oh, I need to do better or anything. But it's like, but I also need to admit to myself that I am doing well, and I have been successful in different ways and stuff. And there are several things I think throughout this entire episode that you've really reiterated a lot. And I think that it shows how important it is to you. And as you talked the last time, you kind of talked about how, you've taken different classes and you've talked to different people, and they showed you that, and they allowed you to realize that. And then it kind of, boom, it hit me like, oh, that makes sense as to why inspiration is such a big word, as to why leader and leadership is such a big word, and community and grateful. Grateful, I think, is a big word that you've used in so many different varieties. And I think that right there is a huge word to use. And then my favorite thing you said this entire time is show up as yourself. I wrote it down. I wrote it down on a post-it. Show up as yourself.
She did say it. She did say it.
It's so.
You probably didn't even remember saying it. Do you remember saying that?
Yeah.
It really is. It's so important to show up as yourself. And I think what Tarek was saying is, you look at the Identity Podcast, you look back at your life as an individual, and you recognize your strengths, you recognize your weaknesses, you recognize your path, your trek to discovering who you are today. And I think one of the greatest things about life, and probably one of the most underrated things about life that we never truly fully grasp, is the fact that today, this is who I am. Tomorrow, I get to add to who I am. I get to develop a different part of me. I get to add a new lens. I get to, do all kinds of different things. I get to venture out into a new pathway. Maybe I discover a fork in the road, whatever it may be. It's the fact of the matter that it's happening. We are living life, and living life to the fullest is one of the greatest things that you can do. And I will say, Dawn, you have inspired me to continue to do that. And I truly am in awe of the path that you are currently creating. And I wish you the best on continuing to create that path. And I think I think to sit here and listen to you and to listen to Tarek every single week, it makes me feel grateful and makes me honored to hear, words and to hear people speak such incredible, deep words. And I think this podcast is just a great way to allow individuals, to allow people to become more of themselves,
Right.
Right. Well, thank you. It makes me feel good. Thank you.
You can accept it. You can accept a compliment.
I'm not good at that.
Sure. But that's what I was saying. It's a mindset. Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just like, when you're saying all these things too, it makes me sit back and think like pivotal moments. Like, honestly, meeting my husband too is one that really helped break me out of my shell. And I wish I could go back to even those beginning days of different things that we did and traveled and experienced that I didn't take in as much because I was so focused on the other things. And I think too, deep down to everybody, is just taking those moments and experiences in life, because I mean, even just this year being cooped up, I never really realized, like, God, I should have been so much more thankful when I was on that vacation or when I experienced that or got to go see those things. And I appreciate you guys saying this because it makes me too just feel like, okay, see, I am like, okay, I didn't realize like the person I really am. So
Right.
I appreciate you both, and it just makes me even open my eyes even more. So thank you for the opportunity.
Oh, I appreciate that. Yeah, one last note before Caleb closes us out. You all, I often saw that once like a pillar of your life was kind of removed, you stepped up as well. Whether it was your older sister or there was another note that you kind of mentioned about that, and
So true.
yeah, it's definitely a dope mentality, great order to keep going. So things may fall down, like you said, you may not be able to travel now, but you always have that opportunity to step in and be a greater version of yourself. So we definitely trust that, and we encourage you to do the same.
Honestly, yeah, it's been honestly, I wasn't kidding. At the beginning of the episode, Tarek said, it's a great time to podcast. I knew it would be a great time to podcast. This has been a great episode. It really has. It's been so much fun and just so inspirational. And I think really eye-opening. I know for the three of us here, and I really do hope everyone that is listening and watching this, thank you as always. Of course, we're so grateful for you. But definitely, we wish you the best, and we hope that you have been able to learn something here and be inspired and be grateful and maybe even find a leader as well in your life. I think sometimes we forget that everything, these big keywords that we've constantly kept reiterating throughout this episode, everything that we've reiterated, there is someone there or something around you that is helping you and guiding you in those ways. And we may not even realize it, and every day we find something new that can guide us throughout this life. And so thank you, Dawn, for coming onto the show. We're very grateful to have you on, and we wish you the best. And then of course, check out our Instagram at Unique Connector. Love that username. That's great. Check out her LinkedIn as well. And of course, check out our podcast, Wealth Ways Podcast. Check that out. Thank you again, Dawn. It is really great to have you on, of course, for Creating Connections, featuring Dawn, to have her on the show. Of course, you've been watching and listening to the Identity Podcast presented to you by Find Your ID NYC. Don't forget, you can check us out every Wednesday at 7:15 p.m. Eastern Time. Of course, check us out on all streaming platforms, as well as following us on all social media platforms, all at the Identity Podcast. Don't forget, if you love us and want to sponsor us, well, guess what? You can. All you have to do is email us at press@findyourdnyc.com, and we'll get back to you with more details. And of course, subscribe to our Patreon page and join our Discord page. You can find all those links and more right at our link tree, which is found on all of our social media bios. Thank you as always for listening, watching the Identity Podcast. I cannot express that enough. Don't forget to check out August as we enter our 1-year anniversary with a great friend of ours, Ivy Rivera, Psychic Ivy Rivera. We're so grateful to have her back on for the 3rd time. She's very excited. She's been posting about it all the time on Instagram. So definitely check out that one. That will be a very fun episode. August 4th, next week's
That's
episode.
the anniversary?
So thank you. That is the beginning of the anniversary. It's a whole month-long thing. We've got a month full of activities. It's not just 1 week. It's a whole month because I'm complicated. That's just me.
You guys are all in for a treat. Tune in, guys. Tune in.
Tune in. Stay groovy. Have a good one. Thank you as always.